I suck at starting these off. So, what did I call this? Talking TV. Welcome to the second episode of Talking TV. I'm here with my friend, my coworker Diego.
What's up, everyone?
And today we are talking about one of your favorite shows of all time,
Yeah.
The Simpsons. I see that you're wearing The Simpsons.
Yeah, I decided to get into the spirit of it.
So, I guess starting off, Simpsons has been around for, almost 40 years now at this point? What's sort of your, how has The Simpsons sort of impacted you as, a young man to now, full-fledged adult and everything?
A ton. So much of me is because of The Simpsons, for better or worse. I was, the perfect age for it. I'm 41, so I think the show, 89, it really kind of kicked off around that time. So I was, a little kid, and it was, bad, right? We weren't supposed to watch it. Parents were like, don't let your kids watch The Simpsons and all that. So it, of course, made you more curious. So I loved it. It has introduced me to so many other movies and musicals and books and just history and stuff, because they use everything. It made me want to go into comedy writing. I attempted it. I moved to New York, lived there for a little while, tried to go for the whole thing. Inspired heavily by The Simpsons, and I would argue it's been a huge inspiration comedically, just kind of being creative. And it's one of my favorite shows, and I haven't seen all of it because there's only a certain point too that I like, and then it kind of fades for me. Right. And like you said, there is so much.
It seems like The Simpsons is a show that kind of comes in waves. I remember in the early 2000s, it seemed like it was just everywhere. No matter what, people would always reference The Simpsons. To your point, I know growing up, my mom would be like, "You can't watch The Simpsons. That show's bad for you." But now I feel like people sort of, the only time I'll hear about The Simpsons is when they predict the future or something.
Right.
So why do you think that The Simpsons went from this huge cultural impactful show to kind of what it is now, where everyone knows about it, but it doesn't seem to kind of hit the same way? Right.
I think it was huge because it was as far as I can remember, the first or the biggest cartoon for adults, because it was a sitcom since maybe the Flintstones and Jetsons and stuff. But those were I mean, I guess it's for the age, but if you watch them now, those are boring as hell. The Flintstones is kind of a boring show.
Flintstones, it's weird because Flintstones, I remember my dad being Flintstones isn't a kid's show, and I'd have to be yes it is, it's Hanna-Barbera, and then growing up it's oh no, this really isn't.
Yeah, it's a full-on sitcom. But anyway, so it was kind of the first kind of comeback, and I could be wrong, but just from what I remember though, adult cartoon, but it was also funny enough that a kid could enjoy. Right. And it was also pre-internet era when it started, so it was you had more limited options of what you could watch. And it was on Fox, which at the time was marketing itself as we're the Rebel Network, we're the new guy, we do this, and Married with Children, and all these slightly edgier shows.
I say the 90s was when things started to kind of networks and stuff started to be more lenient towards kind of edgier jokes.
Totally,
and stuff, right?
Totally, yeah. And the ABC, CBS, NBC were the classic old school networks. They were more traditional. These guys were newer. So I think that had a big impact. And then the marketing of it was insane. It was they're everywhere. They were Butterfingers, it was Bart Simpson. There were all kinds of shirts. I remember I had a Simpsons watch. There were plush toys. The marketing just took over, and it was just everywhere.
I mean, it's interesting thinking about The Simpsons because it's not I feel nowadays people will compare The Simpsons to Family Guy.
Right.
I feel The Simpsons is able to kind of cover more quadrants than Family. I feel Family Guy at a certain point just became about the edgy jokes, where Simpsons, it kind of seemed it really was a off-kilter nuclear family. And so I feel that's sort of had the staying power. It's is it the longest running show of all time, or is it still just animated show of all time?
I don't know. It's definitely animated, but I don't know about all time. It might be at this point.
It's got to be close, I think.
I actually have watched some of this current season episodes just to check it out because also I know some people who are writing on it now that are cool. like I don't know them personally, but I know who they are. My wife knows one of them, but cool. They're funny people, and so it's like, oh, what are how are they taking on and stuff, and it doesn't hit like the old ones did to me necessarily, but it's like an enjoyable watch. It's so funny,
right?
And they kind of really deal with Family Guy, like you were saying, does edgy jokes. Like The Simpsons, I feel like it's never I guess it was edgy in the '90s. You watch now and it's kind of whatever. But they also deal with current day topical stuff. So I watched one that Marge starts a union at her job because she's working at a ghost kitchen, and Jason Mantzoukas is the billionaire who owns it. So it's it's still funny.
Oh yeah.
But they're making the point of all that stuff, especially coming off the writer's strike and the actor's strike and all that for those folks. I'm sure they had some stuff to say about that. And then I watched one there, Lisa. Formula One has taken off as popularity in the United States, and they did one where Lisa's in the kids F1 go-kart thing in Springfield, and it's really silly, and it felt this makes sense. The thing that weirded me out the most of the new stuff is the actual animation, where it's really smooth, kind of like the movie. And it looks weird to me.
Is it all? Did they switch to cell animation?
I think so.
I know that's kind of the big, because Family Guy switched to cell, didn't they? Yeah. I guess before we get into the characters and specifics, why do you think The Simpsons has been able to change with the times over the almost 40 years now that it's been around? How has it been able to stay relevant?
Right.
At a time where sitcoms have pretty much all but died out. Mm-hmm. Adult animation is again, it's very hit or miss. And shows from the 80s and the early 90s are just, unless they're reboots, they're gone. Yeah. And so what do you think it is about The Simpsons that's been able to keep it around for so long?
I think honestly, I think it's just been good writing, from my perspective. And even the seasons I didn't love, or that I don't love, that are the late, not the golden era as it's called. I remember being yeah, this isn't great, but I would talk to my little brothers who were I remember being no, this is funny. So it's kind of, the writers have somehow been able, I think, to relate to current generations.
Okay.
I also think nostalgia has a lot to play with it, and it's kind of like a bedrock. It's sort of like Saturday Night Live. It's hard to imagine it not being around somehow.
Yeah.
Even though I don't watch that show anymore, but it'd be weird to oh, it's no longer there. I feel The Simpsons are kind of on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has been 40 years. And because they cycle through writers, they can kind of hit on the current stuff. Not maybe as quickly as South Park does, but similar in that vein, right? Because South Park does a lot of current day.
Right. Yeah.
To the moment.
Stay with it, yeah.
Yeah, to the moment. I feel The Simpsons do a decent job of that as well.
Is do you know if The Simpsons has gone through a bunch of different showrunners, or if it's been pretty consistent the whole time?
It's been kind of consistent. I'm pretty sure Al Jean is still around as an executive producer, and he's been there from day one.
Okay.
It's kind of been kept in the family, if you will, more or less. There's always someone who had a connection to the previous or whatever like that.
Right. Does Matt? I always pronounce his last name.
Matt
Groening. Yeah. Is he still heavily involved? Because
I don't think so.
Going back to Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane's just I just record my lines and that's it.
I don't think he is anymore, really.
No, he's not.
Yeah, I was looking through the credits today, and I was watching these newer current 2024 episodes, and Matt Selman I think is in charge now, and he was a writer back in the late 90s, 2000s, I think. So he's kind of floated through the whole thing.
That's good though. I feel as long as you have someone that's been there, maybe either since the beginning or towards the beginning, to kind of make sure it stays on course, because I do feel that, again, bringing it back to Family Guy, just because I feel that's the best comparison to it, is that show, you can tell that when a different showrunner came in, or when Seth MacFarlane just kind of stopped giving a shit, that it just, the show, like the quality of the show just went down, and it really hasn't gone back up.
I also feel like too, this is like anecdotal, I don't, but I am like a big comedy nerd, so I listen to like tons of podcasts, like soak all that stuff in. I do feel like the writers, when I hear them talk about what they're doing, like they're fans, like they're coming into it as fans, like people like my age and younger, or people that grew up with it, and so like they kind of take pride and want to keep the spirit of it. So I think that also influences a little bit. It'd be a ton of pressure. Like it'd be a dream, but I'd be like terrified at something. Like when it was like, hey, you want to write?
I mean, the fear probably is good too, because if you're such a fan of it, it's like you want to make sure that you're doing right by the fans and the creators who have come before you on the show.
I think also keeping the same actors doing the voices, even though they're slightly different now. Like you can tell, like some of the aging, but it's not like anything out of this world. But like keeping them intact and not even one or few. I mean, I guess Apu is now no longer.
I was gonna say, didn't they change? Was Apu the only one, or didn't they change another guy too?
Maybe. Yeah, I know Apu was like the big one I remember.
Yeah.
Probably a few others, but either way, like the main Simpsons family, Mr. Burns, like those characters, like still being Harry Shearer, Castellano, all those guys.
That's so cool.
That's a huge help.
So I guess let's go into side characters before we go into like the main cast. Who would be like your favorite side character in the show?
Ooh, that's hard. So I think the best and most accurate character of the show that you could call it a side character, but I think it's the most true to life. It has predicted literally like everything that we're living in. Is the Springfield mob itself? Like the way they like rally around each other, the mob mentality. It is literally what we're doing right now. Like in like the real world online, it is crazy. Like just one dumb thing, just avalanches, and it's so hard to watch. It is a mirror to ourselves. It's crazy. So that I think has always been good. But then let's see. I guess Mo.
I was gonna say Mo is probably my favorite.
Mr. Burns, if we consider a side character. He wasn't like as a kid, but as I've gotten older, I've appreciated him so much more.
He's
like
funny.
You can do anything with him because he's rich. So like the writers have said that's their favorite character to write for, because literally anything's possible because he's like wealthy and it doesn't matter. So he's been kind of more appreciated as I've gotten older.
He's always been funny. I love that little thing that he does always. It's iconic now.
Yeah, of course, all the Phil Hartman ones, Troy McClure and Kent Brock, not Kent Brockman, Lionel Hutz. Those guys are incredible. Like, Kent Brockman is also one that I appreciate now more as older. He's the newscaster.
Oh, okay.
He always has really funny lines. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know.
All of them are
I don't have a favorite. Bumblebee Man still makes me laugh when you see Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah. I definitely would say, like, either Mo or Krusty have always been my two favorite, like, side characters, just because Mo is so nice, like, all the time, but is also, like kind of an asshole.
Oh,
like,
he's a huge asshole.
Yeah, like,
I wouldn't call him that.
Well, there's, like, certain episodes that he does where it's, like, he has a very, I guess, like familial kind of sense to him, where like he kind of feels like that sort of like shithead like uncle that but like you still like to be around him.
He has an insane life with all the flashbacks they show where he was like a boxer. He was one of the original Little Rascals, but he murdered the actor who played Alfalfa. He has like whales and panda bears in the back that he runs with like the mob. Like he's insane, but he's so funny.
He's so entertaining to watch.
The prank phone calls, of course. You know, like when you're a kid, that's like all you want to see. That's like the funniest thing. Amanda hug and kiss. I need Amanda hug and kiss.
Seymour Butts is just iconic. I mean, I guess just going straight into the main cast, Bart, ever since I was little, has always been my favorite. I love how silly Bart is. I love how kind of rebellious he is. Eat my shorts is just one of the most iconic lines ever, I think. yeah, Bart to me is always just whenever he's on screen, I'm like, this is like the personification of like childhood. I
Right.
feel like when I look at him.
Yeah, it's. I loved Bart. Homer became my favorite character. It's like, again, I'm stealing this. I don't remember who said it or where I saw it. Where it's like the stages you kind of go through of like diehard Simpsons. There's like Bart's always number one through childhood. Then you get into Homer as you get older because you kind of start getting some of those jokes and you start working and you figure that out. And if you fully form as an adult, Lisa is the voice of reason that you like love and adore, which is funny. But no, yeah, Bart and Homer are like they're the mains for me.
Yeah.
Again, as I get older, Marge has like some really really funny jokes that she sprinkles throughout, stuff that like as a kid I didn't appreciate, but like she's funny as hell too.
No, I haven't really seen a lot of the later episodes, but it seems like Marge didn't get flanderized, for lack of a better term. It didn't seem like that really happened to her, which I really appreciate, because again, going back to Family Guy, like Lois got fucked up. Like they made her so unlikable in these later seasons, and it seems like Marge, they kept her like kind of level-headed and like a good wife and a good mother and a good person overall.
But she'll still do some stuff out of pocket and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Never like too bad, like Homer or whatever, but.
And so I can appreciate just their family dynamic. I think has always been really funny because it feels real, obviously very much like exaggerated, but like it just always seeing the pranks or whatever that Bart would pull on Homer. Again, not to the severity, but it's like thinking about like my brothers and I kind of like pulling pranks on our dad and stuff, and like kind of pissing him off and annoying him, and it's like so relatable, and so I love seeing that dynamic.
They're all flawed, but they love each other and will always kind of do the right thing for each other.
Yeah.
Like Homer will put his family in danger and whatever, but in the end will give up whatever to like, have it back to normal, or like, because he loves them.
Right.
And all of them, same with Bart, like, he can be terrible to Lisa, but he'll always come through for Lisa in the end.
Right.
Lisa, who's the straight arrow kid, has moments, right? Like the Corey hotline stuff where she gets addicted, like stuff like that. Same with Marge. So, like you said, it's relatable because we're all flawed. Our families are all flawed. Hopefully, we will love each other in the end.
So when the Simpsons movie came out, how did you feel? Like, did you like the movie? Did you not? Because I know there's pretty decent discourse as to like the movie sucks, or the movie is like should be the real ending of the Simpsons.
Right.
And a lot of people.
I was skeptical. I'm always skeptical of Hollywood. I watched it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. Like, it wasn't perfect or like the greatest thing, but it was fine. Like, it's Spider Pig became a thing.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I think it felt like the movie felt like it was like kind of dumbed down a little bit for kids.
Right.
Whereas it seemed the show kind of treated everyone kind of like as an adult or as like a big kid or something, and it definitely seemed like the movie was trying to go for maybe a little bit younger kids as well as some adults.
Yeah.
Is
there's also something magical about just the 22 minutes.
Yeah,
like just kind of cramming it all in
pocket.
And just like more of it. I can watch back to back a few, but like I don't know, they're all different. Whereas like one long plot, can kind of get a little bit like lose its little magic to it.
I think that's my issue with the movie as opposed to the shows, because it's like I don't know if the story of like the movie, I don't know if that was really like a strong enough script, because it feels like it's almost like 3 different episodes that are like weirdly tied together. Where it definitely seems like the show is sort of like you can sit down and you can watch 2 hours or 3 hours of it in one sitting, but because it's so different and there's so many different plot lines and stuff, it's a lot easier.
It felt different than like South Park. I felt like they could carry that long movie musical, because it's a straight up musical. It could carry it fine. Like I didn't feel the same thing watching that I did with like the Simpsons movie.
True. So is there, I guess, like a special or an episode or anything from the Simpsons that is always like your favorite to either go back to and watch or just to like talk about or think about?
Yeah, I think my favorite episode is called Last Exit to Springfield. It's from season 4, written by Jake Kogan, and it is the one known as the dental plan episode.
Okay.
Where Mr. Burns cuts the dental plan from the workers at the plant right as Lisa needs braces. So Homer becomes the president of the union, even though he's a fucking idiot, and manages eventually to like get the dental plan back after they all strike. But it is just a joke every like 10 seconds. It's incredible. Like, it is non-stop jokes, parodies of like the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, parodies of like different things all crammed in together. Yeah, and it just always love that episode. And like right after that, I would say also season 4, the monorail episode, the one that everyone loves, where yeah, you should watch the monorail. It's written by Conan O'Brien. It is basically a little bit of a parody of The Music Man and like whatever, where this guy Springfield gets money and they want to spend it. Again, the Springfield mob is having a town hall meeting. And in comes the swindler who sells them on a monorail to install a monorail, but it's all crap. And so yeah, it's a super fun kind of classic Touchstone episodes, both from season 4. I'd say both those are probably my 2 top that I never get tired of watching.
Okay. I mean, as I think I told you before, Treehouse of Terror has always been my favorite Simpsons thing. That's actually where I found out about like The Shining. Like I learned about The Shining from The Simpsons.
I learned about Clockwork Orange.
I was gonna say Clockwork Orange.
Dressed up like that. Yeah.
They had they did another Stephen King story. Not it, but I can't remember.
I think they've done it since.
Yeah. I want to say it was like another. They didn't do like a Cujo thing, did they? Or like a Pet Sematary thing?
I don't believe so, but I could be forgetting.
I'm trying to remember, but either way, like I know, like because all of their Treehouse of Terror stuff is like referencing other horror movies and stuff, and so I do know that like a lot of my introductions to these movies was through The Simpsons, and so I guess the next question is like, what? Like I know, like you said, like writing and comedy was very inspired from The Simpsons, but is there anything that like now you're so interested in because it was introduced to you from The Simpsons?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, probably like movies and music, honestly, because like they do use cool music. They used to have, that was like the big thing, having guests on. It's become a little bit too much now, like where it used to be kind of a special thing every now and then, but like yeah, I don't know, like they would always have different stuff, and that was cool. Anything still? Yeah, I don't know, probably.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think going back to the original point, just how influential The Simpsons has been just in the zeitgeist, I think is crazy. And so what would be, I think, like the perfect age to start watching The Simpsons? Because again, I remember like you and me both saying that like our parents were like, you know, you shouldn't watch that show, it's bad. But I mean, would you say like an 11-year-old, like a 5th grader or something could watch it? Or?
I think so, especially like the older stuff. Again, you're not gonna get all the references, but you kind of learn stuff that way. And I was always intrigued by like old stuff or whatever, so that was always kind of fun. But yeah, I think somewhere around that age, like preteen-ish, just like a little bit before, where you kind of started coming to your own and figure things out that you like and don't like. Because again, on the surface, it has like silly cartoon vibes and jokes still, but some deeper things too.
Yeah, I remember like the Scholastic Book Fair at my school would always have like the Simpsons comics. And everything, and I always thought that was kind of funny for like a 3rd or 4th grader to have like these Bart Simpson comics and like these Simpsons like tracing coloring books and stuff, and it was so interesting to see how The Simpsons was kind of able to market itself in so many different ways that were able to like appeal to people, because Simpsons, you know, you could go into Spencer's Gifts and
Right.
see like the weird, more adult themed Simpsons stuff, or you could go into, you know, like a toy store or something, and they would have Bart
Yeah.
toys and Homer like Rubik's cubes and stuff like that. And so I guess, like, how do you think? I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Like, when you look at all the different marketing tools that they have, like, I guess, what's your favorite like aspect of the marketing? Like, I think it's like, for me, it's sort of, it's always cool when I can go into any sort of store. Like, I can walk into Target and there's, you know, Bart Simpson or Homer toys or like the family toys or something like that, and it's like, it's clearly meant for kids, but little kids might not even know what this is, yet they're
Right.
still going to get introduced to it somehow.
Yeah. I like that it's always usually kind of cool. Like, I know Vans had like a Simpsons line a few years ago, and like I thought all the clothes like were kind of cool and well designed. Yeah, I think like the stuff is usually pretty cool and like well done. There was a phase I had in life where I feel like my family and stuff like just didn't know what to get me ever for birthdays and stuff. Like, oh, he likes the Simpsons, so here's Simpsons Uno, here's a Simpsons book, here's a Simpsons shirt, here's like and everything, you know. And I still have a lot of it. Like, like it just still works. Like, it's all good. So yeah, I think it's typically, I think it looks cool. I think it's like they do a good job of blending their animation and keeping the like the eyeballs and like the way things look, and like not really changing it and incorporating it in cool ways. And like, yeah, I think that's probably the best. That or like the stuff on Pornhub, you know. That's like, no, I'm kidding. That's just insane. It's crazy that exists. But, you know, hey, not for me.
Oh my god, that was amazing. I remember we had like a Simpsons poster, but it was so it was like it was every single character, but it was the Sopranos. But it was, you know, instead of the gun, it had like the donut.
Yep.
But it was like everyone was in black shirts. It was a black and white picture, and it was just the Simpsons, but just all as the Sopranos. And I thought that was so cool, because I remember like I had only watched like an episode or two of the Sopranos at that point, and I was just like, the Simpsons is like, what? Like, I thought that was so cool, and I loved, like, as you said, how they could kind of take from like movies and music and stuff. I loved that it seemed like The Simpsons was, or is, like, so malleable when it comes to what sort of pockets of pop culture they can sort of fit in.
Absolutely. They've had all kinds of guests on. I mean, hell, South Park even had that running gag with like Professor Chaos or whatever. It was like one of the characters, and he would come up with a plot, and it was like Simpsons did it, because every time, because it's just like, yeah, they've, like you said, malleable. They can do anything with them. They've done every parody. They've done every kind of thing. So it's just, yeah.
It's insane. I mean, how did you feel about that big crossover episode that they did with Family Guy?
It made sense. It felt like a nod to, like, again, going back, like the Flintstones, Jetsons, because like I remember as a kid, I was like, holy crap, like they're getting it. That's crazy. 2 different cartoons, you know. So it's like kind of a kind of a fun thing like that like you don't see as much anymore. At least maybe you do, and I just don't keep up.
Yeah. But, did you like the episode, or because I know that there was, again, like different like Discords and stuff. There was a lot of Simpsons fans that were like, this is basically just a weird episode of Family Guy. Like, I know, don't Peter and Homer have like basically one of like the chicken fights, but like between them?
I think so, yeah. It felt a little, it wasn't like the best episode by any means, but it's going to be hard. And I think they were trying to purposely kind of make fun of themselves a little bit through it. Because like, I loved Family Guy when it first came out, and then just kind of like, I don't know, South Park nailed it. Yeah. It just is a bunch of asides and like just kind of gags that don't have anything to do with story or whatever. And it's like fine. I mean, people like it, and But yeah, it did. That is a good point. That episode does feel more like a Family Guy than a Simpsons episode. But
like, I don't know. Have you watched any of like the later episodes of Family Guy?
I haven't. No,
they are just not good.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's like one episode where like Meg got married to like a Russian guy, but then like I think she's like trying to get killed or something. It's just not good.
Yeah.
Like, none of the plot lines make sense, and they flanderized every single character in that show. Where now, obviously, flanderized is a term that comes from The Simpsons, but is like, did Ned Flanders actually get flanderized as the show went on, or has he stayed pretty consistent?
I don't know. Again, like I haven't watched like kind of later stuff. There's 35 seasons now, I want to say.
Oh my god.
My favorites are like some of season 3, like up to season 9. I think is like pretty solid throughout. There's some duds in there, but overall, I think it's pretty good. After that, like there's a smattering of like the later seasons, and then like I have a black hole. Like I did stop watching it. So like I don't know. I wouldn't totally be able to answer that accurately because I haven't seen it. I've seen like, again, little episodes here and there throughout the years, but not canonically watching it all of it.
I mean, I've only seen like a couple of the later episodes, just kind of like in preparation, watching just sort of like a couple episodes from each season. And again, it doesn't, aside from maybe the characters, like the show now seems like it's a little bit more, I don't necessarily want to say like family friendly, but it seems like it can appeal to more people other than just big kids and adults.
Yeah.
But it's a show that I look at it and I think the consistency for it is insane. And is there something in the show or about the show that you personally, like, if you had the power, that you would change?
Honestly, I think I would end it.
Really?
Yeah.
How would you want to end? Because I know that it's been talked about, like, how will The Simpsons end if it doesn't just go on forever? Like, so how would you want them to actually wrap up the story of The Simpsons?
I don't know. I go back and forth on that, like, in so many places. I don't think anyone should die. I don't think it should be, like, tragic. I think it should just be, like, kind of a family episode that you sort of see everyone a little bit. You get, like, little nuggets of all the characters throughout the town somehow. There's this thing on YouTube now that I have watched a million times. Again, I'm a nerd about this stuff. But it's Conan O'Brien sits down with some of the writers from when he wrote and producers, and they, like, talk about their time together, and like, I just like love listening to that, to the lore and the stories and all that. And they were talking about that, like, they actually had an ending, and it was going to end, and it was going to be revealed that Krusty is Homer, that they're like the same.
Oh shit!
And that was gonna be like a big reveal. And there was another episode that they did. It was like a Christmas episode, I want to say, or something, that they were like thinking this could be it. But obviously it wasn't.
That would be kind of interesting. I mean, they are drawn basically the same.
Yeah.
Krusty and Homer.
I mean, he was fake Krusty for a little bit.
Yeah.
Played his double.
Would you want them to leave Springfield or stay?
Stay. I think just kind of like a classic, like, zoom out of, like, no, they're just going to continue living their lives, and we just kind of, like, go away. And, like, we imagine that they're continuing to just get into dumb adventures.
Would you want to see them, like, aged up at all?
I don't love those episodes when they do that.
No.
They're fine, but yeah. I mean, they could do it, and it's, like, fine, but I do like the keeping them the same.
I know,
like South Park.
Kind of a weird pull, but, like, when Arthur, like, stopped fully, they did, like, the very final episode was, like, them as, like, adults and stuff. And I like the leaving them where they are and, like, just kind of assuming that they just kind of live their lives the same. But part of me is always sort of like that, what happened to them in 15 years, just like a little snapshot.
Okay,
of, like,
yeah.
And again, that's just my
sort of
opinion.
like 6 Feet Under, where like the last episode at the end, you kind of do a montage of like everyone's life, however many years down the road.
Yeah, like I'd like to. I mean, Bart's been like 12 for like almost 40 years. It's like it would be kind of cool, I think, if in the final episode they did like I guess for me how I would want the finale to be is like a almost like a Christmas episode, but like Bart, Lisa, and Maggie like come back to like the parents' house for Christmas or something, and so like you see Bart as like an adult, you see Lisa is like married and has a kid or something.
And that's an easy way to get other characters involved, because it's one of those things of like when people go home for Christmas, it's like, hey, let's go out to eat or let's go to the bar, and then you can like have everyone and see them there. That could be fun.
Yeah, I mean that's just sort of I like reunion episodes that aren't like 10 like what like Full House and
right
like they did. Like I like it when it's the end of the show and not like this kickoff to something new. So I guess before we wrap this up, what's your I kind of asked what like your like least favorite aspect, but like do you have an episode or a part of the show that you just like it almost makes you just want to turn it off?
Yeah, there's one episode, because there's been so many articles written about it, but like when did the Simpsons get bad, or like when did the golden era end, when did it turn, whatever. And the one that a lot of people reference, the episode, I feel like it is dead on. It's like an episode where there's like a panda is brought to Springfield or something at the zoo, and like it's like an exhibit the way the pandas were kind of a craze at zoos in real life. And Homer ends up getting dressed up like a panda at one point at the end, and then the episode ends with like the classic gag of the panda grabbing Homer thinking that he's a real panda and assaulting him sexually, basically raping him, and it kind of ends on that joke. And the show had never been that ever.
So that's like
it was always
the shark kind of moment.
Yeah, and so like it's referenced like this is when it became like a cartoon full-on gag stuff, not so much like a sitcom like it was, like an animated sitcom like it had been, with cartoon elements, because Homer should have died falling out of the gorge, like all kinds of stuff, but like
chokes Bart.
Right, yeah, but it's like still a sitcom vibe, where a gag like that just feels kind of jumping the shark, like you said.
Yeah,
and it changes the course a little,
purposely just trying to like shock value and everything. Yeah, that feels kind of dirty, because Simpsons was never, as to my recollection, again, you're a far bigger Simpsons fan than I am, but like Simpsons never really seemed like a show that would like make fun of sexual abuse or anything.
Not like that. No, nothing like too sensitive or anything like that.
Yeah, like I mean, I know Simpsons was political, but Simpsons was usually pretty able to stay kind of in this lane of playing both sides or almost remaining like neutral in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they definitely lean more like to the leftist kind of ideology and stuff. I mean, Harry Shearer is like very active in that, but like John Swartzwelder, who is, people say isn't a real person, but he's like written a million episodes for them, and he's like a recluse, like he's kind of a libertarian weirdo and always has been. And so you get like little elements of that where like they'll make their like the union stuff, right? Like they're super pro union, and like they've shown that throughout, but then they like also shit on whoever's president and like government and stuff like that, and just kind of like just like relatable, and characters have different opinions on the show, and a lot of nods to the NRA with like the weird like army vet guy that owns the store, and Moe kind of sometimes, like they all kind of go in and out. Homer is like homophobic in the one, or homophobic is the end of the episode where it comes around. So it's like, they kind of address it, but like you said, appealing to everyone, not being overly preachy, not like really hitting you over the head with it necessarily.
So, final question: if you're someone who, or if you met someone who, obviously everyone knows of The Simpsons, but if there's someone that like doesn't watch The Simpsons, or is like, there's almost 40 years worth of television, I don't even know where I'd start, what episodes would you say they should start with? Like, kind of like a list of moments or whatever, like what would you say, like, here's what you should watch to get into the Simpsons.
Right. So anyone watching, here's my recommendations.
All 20 people.
All 20 people. It's going to be a little bit older. So I'd say if you have Disney Plus or anywhere that has them, seasons 4 through 6 have some of the biggest touchstone episodes that people still remember and talk about. So Last Exit to Springfield, that's the one that's like my favorite that I referenced earlier. The Monorail episode is incredible. All the Treehouse of Horrors from that season from those seasons as well. Like I was introduced to the Twilight Zone on the Wing parody thing with like the Goblin on the school bus. Mr. Plow's really funny when Homer becomes Mr. Plow. When Homer becomes an astronaut is really good. When Homer takes a job with Hank Scorpio, who is like a James Bond villain, is also very funny. It's like the first job he's actually really good at. The Cape Fear episode, that's where I first heard about the movie Cape Fear, with Sideshow Bob is incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot. That Sideshow Bob is trying to kill Bart, right?
Yeah, that's like the running thing throughout. It's like the second time, I believe. But it's like that Cape Fear episode is just, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Really, really, really fun. So, yeah, those are some of my favorites. I would say, season 4 through 6, if you've never seen it, is kind of like what a lot of people consider to be the golden era. I mean, even later, but like those especially have the touchstones.
Season 4 through 6. Yeah, man. I mean, again, I love The Simpsons. I've always been a very passive fan, but anytime I've ever watched, I'm like, this is great. Like it's super easy to sit through. It's fun. It's funny. All the characters are likable, and even the unlikable characters you still like. Like again, like Sideshow Bob is not a likable guy, but you still like seeing him.
Groundskeeper Willie is like always angry, but he's hilarious.
I love him.
And he's so buff and everything. It's like really
so
funny.
Scottish.
Yeah.
So again, seasons 4 through 6. If you haven't seen them, I'll have to go through and watch it. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we close this out?
No. Check them out if you haven't seen them. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So thank you to anyone and everyone that watched. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Diego, I'm sure you will be on here again to talk about another show or another movie.
Oh yeah.
And see you guys next time.
Bye.